Starting today is Indigenous Peoples Day. A week of climate protests begin at the White House, led largely by groups of Indigenous people, calling on the Biden administration to declare a climate emergency and stop all future fossil fuel projects. Thousands of protesters are expected to march throughout the week. We caught up with a few of the protesters today. Take a listen.
Our future depends on not funding fossil fuels and divesting. Anishinaabe peoples have been stewarding the land through Line 3, the area of Line 3, and it's our responsibility as an ally. And their future depends on it, their livelihoods depend on it, their culture depends on it, their food futures depends on it. This entire country is on stolen land, and our futures depend on defending our climate and defending the rights of Indigenous people and nature. And we're a part of nature. We're asking President Biden to honor his executive promise to divest from fossil fuels and stop pipelines. Maple Valley Pipeline, Line 3, these are all still going through. Keystone Pipeline was stopped, but that doesn't mean that the other pipelines are stopped.
As Indigenous people, we are standing up together from all over the nation to let Biden know that this is not going to happen. We're here together to stop this and to continue our fight. That it won't stop with this administration. It will continue to the next administration until somebody stops this for all the Indigenous people.
And then you traveled here from Texas?
I traveled all the way from Texas. And it's been a great experience. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to stand up with these people. It's been great, and I'm happy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My son was missing 6 years ago next month on 11/11. He was found deceased. And in order for me to heal, I have had to really go into my Indigenous lifestyle, and they call it the Red Road. And I have been able to heal and help other parents who have had missing children or murdered children. And I came here because I went to Minnesota in the summertime when kids started coming up missing, and I needed to pray there. I needed to pray here today.
For more on this, joining me now is one of those climate activists, Julia Bernal, director of the Pueblo Action Alliance. Julia, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Right off the bat, tell us what you are asking of the Biden administration specifically, and what's the significance of starting the marches today on Indigenous Peoples Day?
Well, at the beginning of his administration, he talked about, being like our climate president, really addressing the climate crisis and taking immediate action. A lot of that talked about addressing the federal fossil fuel leasing program, an overview of new or existing oil and gas infrastructure, including pipelines. And so today was a demonstration to really show that the inaction around addressing climate change and frontline communities, especially Indigenous communities, are firstly impacted by that inaction. And so today was a moment to celebrate our existence and resistance, but also physically confront the Biden administration for not following through with his promises to address climate change.
Well, Julia, let me pick up on what you were just talking about there. The first few days of administration, as you say, President Biden, he was taking executive action on climate change and talking a big game, frankly. He was putting the climate crisis at the center of U.S. foreign policy and national security, made a promise to help restore balance on public lands and waters. He also nominated Deb Haaland as the Secretary of the Interior. That was a big step, he said, the first Native woman in that position, which impacts Native communities so profoundly. Do you think, what do you think the administration could do in addition? What do you want to see them take first steps to make a difference?
Well, I mean, stopping Keystone Pipeline was just one pipeline. There are many, many different pipelines across the U.S., not just oil and gas, but liquid, natural gas. There's just a lot of infrastructure going on that we don't know about. There's Line 3, there's Line 5, there's Dakota Access Pipeline. And, you mentioned public lands there in our region, in the Chaco region. There's over 40,000 active fracking wells in our region. And so there is a lot of remediation, there's a lot of cleanup, but we shouldn't be pushing more development and more infrastructure. And just this past couple of weeks, we have seen the administration continue business as usual, and there are more public land parcels being auctioned off in February. And so this to me doesn't show that the administration is taking climate crisis seriously. And unfortunately, it takes Indigenous people to put themselves and their bodies on the line, and succumb to being criminalized just for protecting our cultural resources, our waterways, our Earth Mother. And I feel like that attitude is across the globe. I mean, we have Indigenous folks from all over the globe that are going to be showing up at COP26 and demanding that on an international level, that action, radical and drastic action, needs to happen now, because we don't have the privilege to debate whether or not the science is real or not.
Julia, let's take a quick step back right now in the climate fight and in the fight to preserve public lands, as you were just talking about. Tell people what's at stake here.
Public lands are actually a big producer of fossil fuels. And, some of the clips that we're showing earlier about how we really need to decrease our carbon emissions, our methane emissions, all of our fossil fuel emissions. And I feel like public lands are a topic that is extremely underlooked, because they're usually deemed as areas for conservation, for recreation, but a lot of people don't know that they're actually leased out for oil and gas. And so there needs to be cumulative review over the federal fossil fuel leasing program. No new leases until that is done, and that's just not the case right now.
And Julia, let me ask you about something else that President Biden has been doing. This year marks the first time a U.S. president has formally recognized Indigenous Peoples Day. On Friday, President Biden, joined by Secretary Deb Haaland, when he issued a proclamation observing today, and a number of states have moved to officially observe Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day, given Christopher Columbus's record as a murderous tyrant. But Indigenous Peoples Day is still not a federal holiday. There is a bill in Congress proposing to make it one. What do you think? I don't know what the chances are, but say Congress passed that. What would it mean to have, as a federal holiday, Indigenous Peoples Day?
Unfortunately, Indigenous people's history is still being debated whether or not it was genocide. And I think that is what is part of the main inaction around declaring Indigenous Peoples Day and just getting rid of the legacy of Columbus, who accidentally found our people and claimed it as underdeveloped. And that just wasn't the case at all. Indigenous people had very sophisticated trade routes, migration routes, and this land was stewarded in very grounded values in terms of respect and reciprocity with the natural world. That was totally disrupted, by discovery, from Spanish Inquisition or other European Inquisition. And if Biden really wanted to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day today, he wouldn't have arrested Indigenous elders that were here today in DC and Lenape territory, Piscataway territory, for speaking out against his inaction.
All right. Well, Julia Bernal, Director of Pueblo Action Alliance, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.